And thanks, Gemma. So welcome everyone to Anthropology in Praxis, the January 2026 version. This meetup is being recorded for the first part of the panel discussion. We anticipate some more people joining, and we'll just let them in as that happens. And today's conversation is about UserX and design. So as usual, we have a few slides to get us started. Did you want to share those slides, Gemma, or do you want me to? Should have asked you ahead of time.
If you could share them,
Sorry.
that would be awesome because I don't have
Yeah,
the second monitor right now.
I am ready. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. And let me move this over here. Okay, so yeah, welcome again. Today we're talking about UserX and design, and we will I think we all know who we are as Anthropology in Praxis, but we are a group of anthropologists in Canada that convene. Some of our conveners are here today, Cora, Kai, and Gemma. And we are also a part of CASCA, which is, but not necessarily having to be a member of CASCA, but we are the official network for practicing applied and professional anthropologists. We offer a membership for free, as I said. We're a Google group. We have these regular virtual meetups, and we really, truly are community driven. And completely led by volunteers. So thank you for everyone that pitches in to make this happen. Today, our session is going to feature on, as I said, UserX and design. And what we wrote about this was that these fields lean into user experiences, user context, using empathy and other mixed methods to generate value. And we believe they're really compatible with applied anthropology. And I think many of us know anthropologists working in these fields. And so we're really excited to have Kat and Emma here with us today to share their work and their experiences with the group. So Emma and Kat, if you don't mind introducing yourselves. Emma, you can go ahead. Emma's with us from Toronto, right, Emma?
Yep. Yep.
Excellent.
Okay, so I'll give you a bit of a context of who I am. I am an anthropologist. I did my PhD here at the University of Toronto, where I now teach, albeit in a different department, back in 2008. I immediately was very lucky that my skills as an ethnographic researcher were marketable and valuable in industry because I didn't want to pursue an academic career at that time. I was even luckier. So I went to an EPIC conference. Maybe you were there in Chicago, and it was like back in 2008, 2009, maybe
Mm.
2008, maybe it was even 2007.
Wow.
And learned about what it meant to be an anthropologist and or an ethnographer that actually like was in industry. So I did like a rapid immersion into like what that is, got a few words that I could use in interviews. And then was also even luckier that there was a job opening in Toronto near where I lived at a consultancy that was called Idea Couture. They were looking for something called a resident anthropologist. I'm like, I'm not sure what that is, but I might as well apply. I got the job and was there for about, I don't know, 15 years and helped build a global interdisciplinary human insights practice. So we had a team of anthropologists, other social scientists, and design researchers doing that front end human insight work to drive strategic innovation and experience design for corporate clients, although we did some government and not-for-profit work as well. So I learned how to do what I do in the field. I have faked it my whole life. And so learned what I do, how to do what I do in field, and then a couple years ago took on a role here at the University of Toronto at the business school, where I am the academic director of the business design here. We are the hub for integrating human-centered design into the business school. So we have a portfolio of MBA, undergrad, and executive trainings that we provide. We do other student programming, and we also engage our community of practice, alumni, and practitioners. So I've spent my life as a impersonating. I was like always the outsider. So I was the anthropologist in the business context and learned how to do the work there. And now I'm just the weird anthropologist interloper in the business school.
I'm pretty sure you haven't faked your way through, but I have faked my way through in figuring out what I'm doing with my screens right now. I tried to change my view to see it. So I'm curious about what you all see. Do you see the slides or do you see like all of you? You see the
I see
slides?
a
Yeah.
slide with our profile pictures.
Okay, good. That's good because I see a bit of a mess here. I see.
It looks good from here.
It does? Okay, good.
Yeah.
This is good. Excellent. Kat, how about you? So thank you. Thank you, Emma. It is a great trajectory to where you ended up and how you are integrated with another discipline. And I think that is an enviable place to be for many anthropologists for sure, that you can influence so many different kinds of people in their work. So thank you. And Kat.
Yeah, definitely the beginning part of your journey, Emma, sounds super familiar. I was also shocked that I had any transferable skills for any kind of job after being really interested in learning about methodologies through my master's and um, theory, doing a lot of philosophical reading. But I now work at the Canadian Digital Service at the federal government of Canada. And recently I joined here. So I started in the public service in September, just last year. Before that, I was working in tech as a gig worker, some say. So not a full-time employee, but a contractor at companies like Meta, Microsoft. And before that, I was studying medical anthropology in my master's at the University of Saskatchewan. And kind of sprinkled throughout, I've still been very passionate about ethnography and have independent research practice still that I present at the Casca conferences on migrant agricultural workers. So that was born out of me happening to work in agriculture over COVID while I was finishing my master's. And I've since been trying to blend these niches together, which actually brought me here to Montreal. I'm a visiting scholar at the Institute for Research, IRMS, Institute for Research on Migration and Society. And they have a program called Bridging Divides, which looks at how digital services are built for migrant communities of migrant workers. So I was like, wow, this niche actually has an application. And now, so I'm able to meet other people who are experts in this field. But in the meantime, I have a day job as a UX researcher.
That's
Awesome.
great. Thanks, Kat, and congratulations on your new job as well.
Thanks.
Okay, well, like we did last time, if I can get my slides changed. Let's try this. Can we see? Okay, guiding questions. What I'll do is I'll just read through these and then I'll facilitate from there and stop sharing my screen so that we can just have a conversation. So what we do is we like to provide some guiding questions. We can go wherever you want to go. We can, very informal, taking us through what we want to learn about today and share with each other. So the first question is, tell us about your work in mixed methods, UX and design. Why is what you do anthropological? The second, how are you using your anthropological training in your work? What difference is it making? Why do people hire you? Tell us about specific competencies and about the kind of work you do. And what advice would you have for students and early career anthropologists for working in non-academic settings? So things that we can talk about there is maybe even how you see your own career evolving, or maybe what your likely next steps are. And if you have extra training outside of anthropology that you'd recommend, or within anthropology that you'd recommend, and why. So no need to memorize those questions. I'll put them in the chat as well as we discuss today, and we'll get started from there. So let me stop sharing. And we'll go to the first question. I can get rid of this view. Oh my goodness, you think it was my first day on Zoom.
Kat, I'm excited to chat. Like, I feel like we're going to end up having more of a fluid conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm excited to hear about your work in the Canadian Digital Service. I think the work that I think most closely sort of intersects with UX that I've done in the past couple of years has been with teams that were formerly part of the Ontario Digital Service, which doesn't really exist anymore. Um, and there's so much to talk about and just in terms of how to influence
Yeah.
these
Well,
organizations.
likewise, some of those companies that you mentioned were like the blueprints for my understanding the industry. Like Idea Couture, I like lived on that website for months
Really?
just reading. Yeah,
Oh, it's
and reading
great.
blog posts. Yeah, I really like admired these companies coming right out of academia. I had no idea that these things existed actually.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
yeah.
Well, then let's talk about your work. So tell us about your work in mixed methods, UX design. Why do you do what you do is anthropological?
I actually have something to share that I
Yeah,
shared
go
with
for
my
it.
team, not share on screen, but
Oh, got it.
yeah, sorry. But it's just something like even uh, you kind of take it for granted how much we know about methods as social scientists, and even people on my teams at work aren't familiar with qualitative research methods. So in my first month at CDS, I prepared like a research methodology 101, like those things on
Oh,
YouTube
wow.
where it's like Vogue, what's in your bag, and people like dump their purse out and explain. It was kind of like that, like what's in my bag as an anthropologist, what's in my toolbox. And something I kind of prefaced that whole conversation with was what culture is, because I think that's a really another thing we kind of take for granted. And not a lot of people understand its connection to tools and tool use, like, of course, digital service design and website and social media are all like tools at the end of the day. So I explained to them sometimes people confuse culture with ethnicity or art, but those things can tell us about culture. But like city planning, music, all of these things, they're cultural factors, but not like capital C culture, which is very elusive. But you can think of a culture as like an operating system, the like webs of meaning. And every tool that we make has an associated culture of use. It has like a shared understanding and memes associated with it. The design given to a tool to do its job contributes to how we end up using that tool. Our movements and embodied experiences lead to us having feelings and emotional responses, and it changes how we use language. And so, by collecting data through language and patterns and like narrative analysis, or just talking and acclimatizing yourself to like your user base, you can really draw conclusions about what is meaningful to them. So, for example, like at Microsoft, I could look at Copilot and think, man, the people who built this really value speed. Like they value experimentation, innovation, but maybe they're less concerned with like how comfortable people are or like how easy it is to use. You can like make claims about the institutions where these tools are developed. So where anthropology comes into UX for me, it's like almost a reversal of that line of thinking. Like we can think about the culture that we'd like to encourage, uh, that we'd like to encourage and prioritize amongst our user base and build the tools that could support those values and those experiences that we want our users to experience. That's why I think what I do is anthropological. Yeah.
Pat, I imagine a possible workshop in that resource that you have described.
I'm working
I think
on
a
it
lot of
here
people
at
would be really,
Concordia. Yeah,
yeah, what a great idea. Yeah, what a great
we
idea
should.
to communicate our value to your colleagues and advocating for the value of anthropology in that way. It's great.
Yeah.
How about you, Emma?
Um, so I would say that for me, the way that my work intersects with UX is so I come at UX usually from a business strategy perspective.
Mm,
So when I'm wearing my consulting hat, a lot of times I'm coming in with a broader strategic experience design challenge that contextual research will help unpack and will have implications for user experience in the broadest term, in the broadest sense of the term. So that might be to drive service design or service experiences. And um, I think when I think of some of the recent sort of bigger projects I've done on the consulting side, um, working with Service Ontario on a couple different projects. That definitely had digital implications, but were like looking at human experience more broadly. So there was one understanding the needs of vulnerable populations in
mm,
order to better serve them. So we were doing ethnographic design research with vulnerable populations. So new Canadians, people with disabilities, language fluency limitations, Indigenous communities, people who are typically vulnerable, especially within the context of government service design. Um, so, from an anthropological perspective, really designing research protocols and
mm,
executing research that can really unpack the broader context that shape um, intersection and interaction with those services. And for me, the anthropology of it is that thick description and
mhm,
how do we provide, to your point, Kat, those webs of meaning, that thick description to first of all challenge a lot of the taken for granted assumptions that the client has about how they understand a problem. For me in my work, I think one of the most important things we do is problem framing and reframing. What
mm,
often where the client comes to you, the thing that the client usually says is broken and needs fixing is usually not the thing that's actually broken and needs fixing. It's just a symptom of the real thing that's broken and needs fixing.
mm,
And where I most feel like an anthropologist is when my research can be rich enough and thick enough to help expose those taken for granted assumptions and reframe how we understand what it is we're solving for.
mhm.
I think that's where I think the work is most anthropological from my perspective. Yeah.
Emma, the whole time in all of that experience that you shared, was it known that you were an anthropologist? Was that common knowledge? Yeah.
Yeah,
And valued. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Mm,
Um, It is definitely been the fact that I'm an anthropologist has been offered me entry and seats at the table
mm,
throughout my career, for sure. There has been, I think, an elusive kind of sense of like anthropology, and this has been problematic actually in industry that anthropology offers like the magic beans, like, oh, your anthropologist can come in and tell you the answer, the things that people are thinking that they're not saying. Like the way that anthropology's value proposition is positioned in market has been very problematic and something that I think has not served us well, to be honest with you. But
mhm,
I have found that being an anthropologist, for the most part, has opened doors. into rooms that I would not normally have had access to. But as a result, I now have several other competencies that sit outside of the typical toolkit, but are used within mine.
Do you, because I think all of us might have a different experience on whether anthropology is even known. Like even having a incorrect understanding of anthropology, I would appreciate that. Besides being known as Indiana Jones and or Jane Goodall as the examples that might be given to me.
Yeah.
So am curious about what do you think what was it about whether your anthropological capacity competencies or other competencies that opened those doors, and don't be humble, maybe share about how you express your value as well to get through those doors.
So I'll tell you the things that I think that I had control over, but I'm going to tell you about the things that I benefited from that I didn't necessarily. So I think I think that part of the way that I received entry into these places, to be honest with you, was in the context of being as part of a consulting practice that was from a business development perspective and trying to generate business. Sadly, like being able to say that I had an advanced degree was just enough to try and get me in front of clients. So, being able to say that you have a graduate degree, she has a PhD from the University of Toronto, like it was just enough and then people didn't care. Do you know what I mean? Like it was just a selling tool that I
People
greatly,
add it as their badge.
yeah, it was
She's on our team.
yes, it was a selling tool that my company benefited from,
Mhm.
that differentiated us, gave us like my credentials were a competitive point of difference for my company. Um,
Yeah.
so that, but th that being said, it took me a long time to actually figure out how to translate my skills into any kind of valuable output, to be honest with you. The first few years, I kind of delivered crap because I was writing insights reports and research reports that my thesis supervisor would have loved, but were like not legible within the worlds of meaning within which I was delivering. And it took me a few years to figure out how to translate the value of what I do into formats that there's two layers. What actual format and how to communicate what is the anatomy of an effective insight or an effective story narrative that has that a executive can digest. Like there's that piece. Um, but then there was also learning how to connect the dots between what I learned about human needs, beliefs, and behaviors and their business relevance. What is the strategic business relevance? And how do I say, okay, here's what I learned, but why does it matter for you? Do you know what I mean? And putting
Mhm.
that, being able to have a business perspective, like the truth is, I'm a strategist that has uses anthropology to do better work. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to ask the same question of you, Kat, if you don't mind, about your persona as an anthropologist in your career. Has it been known or unknown? You're sharing with clearly it's known in your new engagement. Talk about in your previous engagements and how you managed that to get to the table as an anthropologist.
Yeah, Emma, it's so funny hearing what you're saying from your story because it's like really validating to hear someone, can make mistakes early in their career and realize and grow. And I've actually had almost the exact opposite experience in that like the order of events, I guess, was a little bit different. Like I saw myself first and foremost as an anthropologist trying to break into business and I didn't have any clue about anything about strategy. I just had a really great friend who was, my peer, and she became a really like hard baller mentor for me. Like she was no nonsense, worked at Deloitte,
Mhm.
and we just have knew each other since we were 18. And she actually had someone drop out of a study where it was a consultancy who consulted with pension firms, and they were just picking up, like they were a startup, ex Deloitte people, and they wanted to have foundational research for their consultancy and needed a business ethnography on like what is the state of research now of retirement in Canada. And their lead researcher dropped out. And so my friend Amy was like, Kat, you can do research, right? I was like, heck yes. What do you need me to do? I'll do anything. It was like the start of COVID. I graduated in 2019. I had done some remote work for a different kind of company, but it was still more academic than it was private sector stuff. And I feel like um, I think like or for me anyway, like my anthropological identity, there's like a covert element where I feel like it could be on my resume, and I tried to like promote that. And I tried to, like, really early on, like I was saying, I was reading like every little blog post on every uh thing, like from Doblin and Idea Couture. And so I feel like right out of the gate, I was learning a new language of jargon in business and already translating my methodological know-how into the terms that were rooted in the context where I wanted to work. It's like dress for the job you want, not the job you have. So I was like explaining myself for the jobs where I wanted to work. And that kind of brings me to the covert, or wait, did I say overt? Or I guess overt is like that, where it's like explicitly I'm trying to be an anthropologist transitioning into business. But then like the covert aspect is the skill set that anthropology gave me as a person. It was like my ontological like worldview, like in the background I'm always running like in anthropology mode. And I think that skill set just helped me like interpersonally navigate reaching out to people on LinkedIn, or kind of really quickly picking up on elements like etiquette that I would have no idea like what how to do, like what the heck a coffee chat is. Like I didn't know what Google like calendar invites meant. I didn't know what anything meant. And I feel like training in anthropology, you are like an outsider, like you were saying, Emma, and it's your job to like learn a new language or just pick up all of these very fine nuanced behavioral cues from everybody else around you and try to adopt them and analyze them. And that worked in my favor as well.
Yeah.
Thank you both. And you've sort of answered in a way the next question, but the second part of the question is the difference your anthropological training is making. So maybe you touched on a few things, Emma, from some of your work, but maybe just some cases or examples of where that anthropological training made a difference in the work that you're doing. And if without the anthropological lens, um, the findings may not have, or the outcomes may not have been as successful. So anything you want to share there, Emma?
Yeah. I think so. Again, it's like this double layer of like the actual content and then how you show up as an anthropologist, being able to be in, to what you were saying, Kat, like showing up into strange environments, making the familiar strange and the strange familiar, like where you it's our job to show up in a place that you don't understand and try and make it legible, right? So on the first layer, I think the difference the anthropological lens has offered in specific pieces of work, really just helping clients understand their problems differently and like redefining the starting point, I think is really important. This ability to that anthropologists have broadening and widening the aperture of what we're looking at and whatever phenomenon, it's the difference between a wink and a blink, right? Geertz talks about
Mhm.
these identical gestures, the rapid opening and shutting of the eye. But they mean very different things, right? Like one is like your body's autonomic nervous system keeping your eyes moist and free of dirt and debris. And then the other is like quite pregnant with meaning. It's a way of conveying a conspiratorial gesture or to convey that you're making a joke or even sexual desire. Like their same gesture or phenomenon can be interpreted very differently depending on the context. And the idea that anthropology is able to offer that context that can question taken for granted assumptions is I think a very powerful thing that we do. Yes, ethnography is great and the rigor of our methods are good, but towards what end? And in my experience, the reason why our research methods are important is because they offer broader context to clients solving problems that allow
Mhm.
them to make decisions differently.
Mhm.
So with Service Ontario, for example, with that vulnerable, just staying on the same case, for example, they came to us like their problem idea, that business challenge that they were trying to solve was linked to a human set of problems. How do we better serve these people? Um, our research, our insights, the story we were able to tell about the experiences of these vulnerable populations allowed us to have an overarching perspective around the way that service is delivered, not the minutia, not the touch points, not specific problems to be fixed, but a bigger problem um, is that they're approaching using the language of clients. Um, Service Ontario approaches citizens as clients or customers. And the language of like capitalism and implies a competitive marketplace that people who use Service Ontario do not have. So you are not a customer. You cannot go elsewhere to get your driver's license. You cannot go elsewhere to get your critical documents, the things that will allow you to remain safely and legally in the country. There's no competitive place to go to if you think they're doing a shitty job. So we were able to use our insights to reframe what they're doing from the language of a customer to the language of citizen and human
Mhm.
rights. And that good service delivery is a human right for government services. And it's not just about your NPS score. This is a human rights issue and able to sort of frame what was at stake for them in trying to solve that
Mhm.
problem. So that um, to me is like the power of anthropology in those
Mhm.
spaces in changing the idea of what the problem is. It's like you thought this was a blink, but this is a wink. You know,
Mhm.
it's like that.
I love that. Thank you. For me personally and professionally, I really appreciate that. I'm sure others do as well. How about you, Kat?
Um, what was the question again? How anthropology
Yeah,
makes a difference?
yeah. How the work that you're doing is making a difference, and the anthropological work that you're
The
doing out of the
anthropological
anthropological
side.
lens. Yeah.
Um, well, I think this is like a good chance for me to share this one artifact. I call them like research artifacts at work because they're kind of what ends up left over once you finish a project. It's like my master's thesis. It's just like sitting online somewhere, but so are all of these like reports that we're writing. So they're all kind of artifacts. So this is a fake one. Like, can everyone see that? The opportunity
Hmm.
assessment.
Hmm.
I did this for a job interview that I didn't get, so that's fine. And the like it's mine, so Ontario doesn't own it. But I was just thinking like it was really challenging. I never did anything like this, and sometimes when you apply for jobs, they put you through challenging test scenarios that you would encounter in that job and you have like you have 4 days, like I think I had 4 days to come up with an opportunity assessment, and I never heard what that was before. And so I don't know, anthropological training is like you do some literature review, go online, go on YouTube, figure out what they're talking about, and then you have to create it. And the scenario, which is a real thing that they're working on, it's I think in BC to create a more digitally streamlined service for contractors applying for building permits. And it's what they're wanting to call a building permit hub at the time. It was just an idea, but they're actually doing it with my friend who got the job, which is cool. And this thing though was really challenging because they're like, how would you come up with a digital hub? Like, how would you even approach this problem? And so, what I'm getting at is like, as an anthropologist, okay, someone told me that like as an anthropologist, we're just really good at macro level thinking. So like culture, systemic problems, the interrelatedness of issues. This is all like very systems thinking. And even when you get into linguistics or semiotics or kinship, these all came with diagrams for representing the conceptual theories in anthropology. And I kind of leaned really heavily on that, but I think it's just something that I was good at as well. Like I enjoyed systems thinking and I didn't know it was called that in school and that it was applicable. But I think that's really where the anthropology shines through for me, like being able to envision from like a top down how all of these interrelated components come together, where there might be gaps where things aren't communicating, what all of the different touch points are between like the users. So I just wanted to share some of these diagrams that I did in this study. So this is, or in this fake proposal to create a hub online. So this is a service design roadmap. It's just looking at different phases. And this is really just a way to communicate where these phases that exist, like in time and space. It'll be like people in workshops, you know, you're in different phase of a pilot project or the research before a pilot project, and how to convey that in a proposal document for people who work in the government. And this is kind of the language, like I'm kind of early career still, so maybe they don't, maybe they don't like ideally look like this, but oh no. So that was one. There's another one, like we do things like this now that I am working in the public sector. This is something that you might give to a developer, like it's very high level, but basically this is what happens once a person's application goes through in the system. Like they are able to make their first payment, their application fee is processed. Like these are things that like it's just the order of events, which you kind of take for granted. But when you think about it culturally, if you switch two of those things around, it would be a really awkward or like bad scenario sometimes. So you kind of need to use your imagination a lot in this line of work too. And I don't know, there's something anthropological about that. It's almost like there's a lot of sci-fi writers who are anthropologists. I think that it kind of goes hand in hand. Like you can anticipate human behavior in a way just because of repetition, how many times you've encountered it, how many participants told you that they had that experience in an interview. And as like a person, just like in my day job, I have all this stuff like floating around in my brain still from having done all of those interviews. And then you get to apply it when you propose things. But this is like where that those like smaller things came from. It was like a big process map that I made. So this is unfortunately too small, but it's basically mapping out a process and it
Hmm.
looks like this because that's how I wanted it to look with like the squares and the colors, but it doesn't have to look like this at all. And like sometimes you want to add like a little preface, so you just put another box out there. You kind of like can do it however you want, but it's the point that it's very clear. You have to like
Hmm.
describe the system very clearly. So I think there's something anthropological about that too.
I think we'd all agree that being able to see systems and seeing a holistic view of a problem, both of you have brought that up, that business can think that they can think they understand the problem because there's a pain point, but until you start peeling the onion, as I would call it with my clients, you don't really get to the root of the issue, and it may become more complex. So that is definitely something that we're good at pointing out, which some people may not necessarily want to hear. But that is truly how to solve the problem and maybe even prevent the issue from happening again. So thank you for that. Hey, Craig, I see your question. Why don't we, yeah, go ahead and answer that. If you see it, Emma, in the chat, why don't you go
Yeah,
ahead
yeah.
and answer that?
So yeah, I think the problematic nature of the value proposition being framed for anthropology as magic beans, the way a little more context there, like the way that that used to cause problems, yes, it's the dangers of being overhyped. So we would sell projects by promising clients that we could uncover hidden motivations and hidden truths. And that's not necessarily always true. Like sometimes you will find an insight that totally upends the understanding of current state. Sometimes. You're lucky. You're lucky if you do. A lot of times our insights are additive, they validate what the client already thought they knew. In the best case scenario, a different way that I tend to try to position the value rather than like being able to deliver magic secrets is being able to offer a broader perspective on a problem to be solved, which opens up different avenues for solutioning. So once we can show you thought this was what was wrong, but we did a bunch of research, and that's actually not exactly only what's going on. There's all this other stuff going on. And if we look at this situation as a whole, what you originally thought you needed to do to fix it isn't exactly it. So we've reframed your understanding of the problem, which leads to a different direction for solutioning. That would
Mhm.
be like the less problematic way of selling the value of what we do, in my opinion. Because your research may not uncover necessarily things they didn't know, but your strategic narrative can give a set of implications that impacts what their business hypothesis was. So
Mhm.
you may not have to uncover magic secrets to shift an understanding of a problem.
Mhm. That's great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Kat, is there anything that you came to mind that you wanted to add?
I just wanted to add that I agree. And I think about that really often, perspective taking and how kind of transformative storytelling can be for
Mm.
people. Like when you think about it, these are just other people at work. They have their own tasks ahead of them. And a lot of the jobs of people on product teams, like I'm used to working with, are not to they don't have the opportunity or the bandwidth to just step outside of their zone for a minute and look at the big picture. And a lot of my time as a contractor, I come in and help people with that. I know that's like a much more like central aspect of consulting, but I think it's really similar when teams hire a UX researcher for the first time, or even yeah, if it's a mature team or not. Like I think bringing that perspective to people who are kind of like so used to looking like really closely at something, especially like developers, like they're so deep in the weeds that it kind of takes a person to like go on a journey. Like we kind of use these metaphors at work where like, we're going to take you along a journey and only you can fill in the blanks or like choose your own advent, like to do kind of workshops to reframe things for people that they they're not they don't encounter that opportunity to really like step back and see things from a new perspective, I think, in their day-to-day stuff.
That's great. Thank you. I think you both sort of touched on the third question, which was why do people hire you and any specific competencies about the kind of work you do? So I'm going to ask, maybe talk about the other competencies, as you mentioned earlier, Emma, and what you've learned, Kat, along the way to integrate your work into the private and public sectors. Is there any additional training or competencies that you recommend in the fields that you're working in to students or early career, or anyone wanting to shift their career at any point that's an anthropologist?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
So I think the specific competencies, um, so there's a couple of different things. Like at a high level, like things, so I have a certain, like, I don't know, I got like so I, business, just like a certain level of business fluency.
Mhm.
When you're doing this work and you have a client and you're wherever you're doing UX work, it is in a business context, even if you're working in a not-for-profit or in a
Mhm.
government context. So understanding like the business side of what you're doing and how enterprise context works, especially if you're working in a large organization, is absolutely critical for your work to be implementable, right?
Mhm.
So, like our ability to form rapport, to uncover data, translate data into insights, identify strategic or business implications, these are necessary skills, but they're not sufficient for effective work. If we're not also, which is this other really important piece, able to translate what we're doing into the culture of the organization that we're
Mhm.
working in. Um, and this is especially true for, I think, students or people leaving anthropology or leaving academia and trying to get into industry. We really have to figure out how to translate what we're doing into a legible format. Um, it's like it's a double translation process. Like you need to translate what you learned, and then you need to understand what people are
Mhm.
saying to you and what it means, but then you need to translate it into a format that makes sense for the organization so that people can pick it up, right? Um, a lot of the time, I think that means co-creation, co-design, learning how to co-create with the people that you're working for. I firmly believe that authorship is ownership. If we as consultants or subject matter experts take away and do all the work and then hand it back, it's really, really hard to take that away and do anything with. So really just like being able to tailor our approach, the language we use, everything into the organizational context that we're delivering in, I think is really, really critical. Um, I think like in addition to business expertise, strategic foresight is something that
Mhm.
I use a lot and pair with UX research a lot.
Mhm.
It's the way the two things work together. If the design research or UX research is about understanding, like having a human-centered understanding of the current state, being able to do strategic foresight work offers a view to how things are shifting.
Mhm.
And so being able to pair those together, you can offer a perspective on change, right? So like this is what we know about what's happening now, and here's a perspective on how it might shift. Therefore, let's talk about the decisions you need to make in a context that is contextually relevant today, but paying attention to shifts. And I think that's another really important set of tools to come to the table with.
Those are great. Thank you. I think we can all appreciate the idea of the double translation. I was thinking, what a great way to describe so much of what we do, because we can't skip that step for ourselves in understanding what it is that we're learning, but then we then have to translate it to the client and those that we're working with, and also the co-creation. And developing competencies and understanding in those that we're working with for sure, and leaving them with that. Kat, how about you? Talking about sort of additional training or competencies that help you do your job or that you've taken on to do the work that you're doing.
Um, and my headphones died. Can everyone still hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I've thought about this, and I used to be pretty insecure about not having a business background. Initially, I thought, like, how necessary is it to do maybe like a boot camp or something, or learn how to do project management? And I was lucky enough to have my mentor who helped me a lot, and she was just really straightforward about, because she knew the context that I was in. She was almost like my guide into business world and telling me like, no, you need to look presentable in these meetings because you're talking to like venture capitalists and they need things to be streamlined. Another person in like a coffee chat in LinkedIn gave me really solid advice because I discovered that you can just ask people to meet with you for a video call, strangers on LinkedIn, and people are just down for that. And so I did that and I was like, hey, how's it going? And I like had no preparation and I didn't know like what happens next. And he was really patient. And then like by the end, he was like, like a good way of thinking about prep for these kind of coffee chats is writing, when you write to a person initially, tell them the purpose of why you're reaching out, what about their experience interests you, and then give them a kernel of like something that is interesting about you or what you bring to the table that makes you unique. And it gets them kind of
Mhm.
thinking like reciprocally, like how you could help them one day again. And um speak, like, this is so hard for me because I'm not concise, but he was like, when you talk to people like in business, talk to them like the same way you would write an email, like just very like sentence, like no digression, like very to the point. And so that was
Mhm.
another really challenging skill that I still work on all the time. And yeah, what was the other thing I was going to say? Um, sorry, can you say the question again? This
Yeah, just
other
what
soft skills
competencies or
or
extra training that you took on in order to do
oh,
your job that you might recommend.
yeah, I think rapport building is really underrated in UX
Mm.
maybe. Or maybe it's pretty known in UX research, but when I was working as a consultant for that business ethnography with the people at the pension startup, um, like I took it for granted that I could recruit people from the sidewalk, and they were really impressed with that because they just worked like Bay Street kind of jobs, and they talked to other people in their very like expert level business, and like the more advanced you get in a certain direction, it can be harder for some people to just relate to anyone off the street. I think anthropology, like this goes back to anthropology again, but I think it's something people can learn how to normalize and be okay with, just like interpersonally, just you're gonna embarrass yourself, like you're gonna be talking to all kinds of people in this work, and you have to be okay with like thinking on your feet or putting yourself in
Mhm.
positions that you wouldn't do personally. Like just talking to strangers can be daunting for people, but that's
Mhm.
a skill that I think I brought to the table, like just being able to do that ethnography on the fly, and I did a lot of in-person recruiting. and I've had other projects that were very in person, like the work that I did for um, I was another uh, one of two lead researchers on another ethnography for a design agency, and their client was 7-Eleven, and 7-Eleven wanted to rebrand or like pivot, looking into the future of electric cars and more people like moving out into the suburbs from the city. It changes like kind of how effective gas stations are. It changes what convenience might look like. And so they hired this consultancy to, or this agency to figure out what does convenience look like in America. And it was me and another researcher going to 5 different cities in a month, and just each of us had a videographer with us, and we were
Awesome.
doing in-person interviews, like customer interceptions. We had a bunch of money to like offer participants, which you don't do in anthropology necessarily, like not that amount of money. So people were like kind of keen to talk to us, but it was still super unnatural feeling and embarrassing and everything, like just putting yourself out there and being rejected constantly by people that don't want to talk to you. And so there's almost like an emotional barrier that you have to like get used to. Also, listening to yourself in recordings constantly. That's a thing that people need to get used to too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
There's no
would
Kat,
course that you can
yeah,
take.
yeah. Go ahead, Emma.
a skill or competency that I wish I had and don't
Hmm.
is quant.
Ah,
Same.
yes.
Quant. I wish I could do quant.
Have either of you looked at ways to improve improve that skill at all?
I mean, I just partner with people that can do quant,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
like, I think in a, you know, if I won the lottery and I like could go back and do like quant degree in something, like that would be amazing. Like it would be fun, but I don't
Yeah.
see myself being able to do it in the near future, but it is a gap for me. Being able
Mhm.
to conceptualize the questions that I'm asking in quantitative terms. Like I've gotten a lot better over the years at being able to at least understand conceptually how any given problem could be quantified and where quant should intersect. But if I had more like dexterity in that myself, that would be really,
Mhm.
that would be just like pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
that's the
Mhm. You
same with
too?
me. I know
Yeah.
Qualtrics has free learning, but I don't know if that's if you have an
Mm.
enterprise kind of subscription
Mm.
to it. But my manager, like we were just looking at different tools that we could procure as a team and what's in our budget and what's not in our budget. I work with a quantitative researcher as well in the who's on the customer experience team. And so it is a nice pairing.
Hmm.
Like you said, I'm familiar with these opportune moments to blend methodologies and when it's appropriate to do like qual first and when to do quant, but I couldn't sit there and like do the code and
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
code the survey and crunch the numbers. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
I would take a
That's
course.
great advice.
There's a lot of free learning, and like
Mhm.
LinkedIn Pro or whatever a month is like $50. It's kind of really expensive, but they bought Linda, the
Yeah.
library, like learning services or whatever. So all of the LinkedIn learning courses are really good. Like it's not necessarily like a star to put on your
Mhm.
resume, but when it comes to practical skills like that in YouTube,
Mhm.
you can learn a lot,
Mhm.
Yeah.
beginner level of stuff.
That's true. That's great advice. Kat, did you ever take any formal training or anything to do with service design?
Oh, I did actually. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about
And
that.
I really stand behind it. It was with the School of Continuing Education at U of T, and
Hmm.
it's a great program. I was looking into in a period of unemployment, how to like bolster my like how to maybe pivot into service design, because what ended up happening after I got my contract at Meta, I started off with these business ethnography projects, like very explorative research, which I love going out into the field and synthesizing everything you learn through field work and bringing the questions to the table myself and seeing what's on the horizon. And so that's very like, I guess, generative research or exploratory research, that macro to micro or micro to macro thinking that anthropologists do. I would love to have kept doing that. But yeah, after working at Meta as a UX researcher, I think it's like a slippery slope that you can really easily be pigeonholed into just usability research, which is
Mhm.
evaluative and you're
Mhm.
like validating designs, which it's
Mhm.
like trigger warning, like validation.
Yeah.
This word is just gets under my skin because you don't know what the right answer is. So you're not validating. Like it's
Mhm.
I mean, sometimes it's like totally fair, but I think a lot of the time the mindset shouldn't be like we're validating that we have the right answer. It should kind of be to like what is the right answer, or like, what alternatives are there, like what value does this one bring us to the other one. It's a little bit more nuanced than just like
Mm.
let's bring in the big guns with an anthropologist and answer this yes or no question. Like it's kind of like
Right.
so yeah, I was getting like pigeonholed into like very the minutia of like, do
Mhm.
people like the button on like the left, or should we bring up the button on the next page, or like when should they put in their like information here, or like after they've seen the disclaimer, like a lot of work in Figma. And I was thinking like, how do I go back to that broadened scope? And yeah, so service design seemed a lot more comprehensive, a lot more holistic, in that you're not just looking at the user of one page of designing your Instagram avatar. Like you're
Mhm.
looking at
Mhm.
someone who wants to cash a check. And so it's like they leave their house, they get into their car and drive down the street, which could be a mile into town or 100 miles into town, and then they get to the bank, and then maybe it's closed. And so how are they going to access the bank services now? They go on your website, and it's like the full user journey of what your customer is going through, which could span multiple different product websites and
Mhm.
tools. Like now they're punching into an ATM, and then what does all the back end, the back of the stage look like of that ATM,
Mhm.
how it's coded, what are the devs that you're going to have to talk to, and then you present that to like RBC, who wants to optimize
Mhm.
their service delivery. So that's exciting to me. And
Mhm.
the program at U of T, they have great instructors. Kari, I can't pronounce, I don't remember how to pronounce his last name, but Kari is a great instructor that did the intro to service design.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I believe there's like 6 classes. And then by the time you're done the 6, you get the certificate. So I think I'm
Mm. That's
three or
great.
four in now.
Well, that's
And
great.
yeah.
That's great. Thank you. There's a with U of T being here and represented as well with Emma. So that's great. I'm going to wrap up the panel now, and then we'll just so we'll stop the recording.